أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to sincerely welcome you to our open house orientation session for our seminary classes. I would like to welcome those of you present here and also those who are following us online. Let's offer an overview of Al-Hujjah Islamic Seminary. We'll talk about the classes that we've offered the last 2 years, and then we'll examine this third year that we're going to start on Monday, inshallah. The name of this seminary is taken from the Imam of our time, Al-Imam Al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah. Hujjah in Arabic means proof, evidence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equipped the human being with types of proof. We have the intellectual proofs. The intellect that God has given us is a tool that shows us right from wrong. It's a tool that takes us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one meaning of the hujjah, proof, evidence. If someone's presenting an argument, you ask that person, what's your evidence? What's your proof? In Arabic you would say, what's your hujjah? Now the reason why Al-Imam Al-Hujjah is called Al-Imam Al-Hujjah is because he represents the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because through him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us. So we dedicated the seminary in honor of the Imam of our time, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us through Al-Imam Al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah. The primary idea behind the seminary was that we have in this new generation many of our youth, even adults, young adults, who are really interested in Islamic knowledge. But there have been challenges in the past. For instance, not all of Islamic knowledge was available in English. You had to learn Arabic or Farsi or Urdu or some other language in order for you to access this rich Islamic culture that we have. This was a challenge. Another challenge was going to the seminaries. While I do encourage everyone who can to go to the seminary, that's not something you could really replace. Being there at the seminary, close to the holy shrines, seeing maraji', scholars and teachers, that's not something that could be replicated anywhere on earth. The seminary has its own experience. But a lot of people cannot go to the seminary. It's difficult for them. Logistically, their families don't allow them. Their life circumstances don't allow them. So, over the years, I heard a lot of our youth being frustrated. I really have this thirst for knowledge, but I cannot go to the seminary. So we came up with the idea to take the content that we have in our seminaries and deliver it to those who have this thirst for knowledge in English, in a very structured way, similar to college classes. And that's how this idea came into fruition, alhamdulillah. So 2 years ago, we started our first year of classes. In the first year, we offered 9 courses. Just to give you an overview of these courses, because they're all available online, we made sure that every session gets recorded, so that those who hear about the seminary later, they don't miss out on anything. Everything is recorded. You can register for those classes. You can see the classes online. So all that content, alhamdulillah, is preserved for us. We started with 9 courses. I will give you a brief overview of these courses so we can see how we went into our second year and how we will start this third year. So we have Fiqh Islamic Law. Fiqh deals with the rulings and the rituals that we have in our religion. So we started with the book of purity, Kitab al-Tahara. Everything that you need to know about wudu, about ghusl, about water being pure, najis. How does something become najis? How does it get purified? What are the processes in Islam that make something pure? We talked about gelatin, for example. Is that halal? Is that haram? Why do scholars have differences of opinion here? So everything that has to do with water, with purity, is something that we discussed. Now, what you will find interesting about this course is that we're not just giving you the rulings, where you're sitting there and just hearing the rulings. This is haram, this is halal, this is najis, this is tahar. No. We actually walk you through the process that scholars will go through in extracting those rulings. Of course, at a basic level, not at a very deep, confusing level, because at the seminary it does get very technical. But for instance, when scholars have issued a ruling, well, why have they issued that ruling? We'll examine a hadith. See, this is the hadith that most scholars have used in issuing this fatwa. Now, when there's a difference of opinion, some maraji' say this, other maraji' say something else. Well, why? We walk you through the reasons why they have some of those differences. So it's a really interesting class that not only allows you to know the fatwas of the scholars, but it gives you insight into how they arrived at those fatwas. And as seminary students, that's exactly what we want. We want to see that process in order to appreciate the ahadith that we have. How scholars use the Quran and hadith to issue these fatwas. So we looked at the book of purity, and then we examined the book of salah. Everything that you need to know about salah, the details of salah, the ahadith that we have, that's something that we examined in detail. And then we examined the book of fasting, Kitab al-Sawm. All the rules around fasting. What is it that invalidates the fast? What does not? The timing, the fajr. Is it sunset? Is it 15 minutes after sunset that we stop breaking the fast? Why are there differences of opinion? Why have Sunnis said, that at sunset you break your fast? Or as many Shia scholars have said, you wait, that extra 15 minutes. We examine that in detail, and we actually walk you through the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt and how scholars have understood them. Another thing we discussed is the hilal, the crescent, right? Every year we have this controversy in all of our communities. Eid starts tomorrow, or is it the next day? Well, why? We give you a glimpse of why scholars have different opinions. Do we have one horizon? Do we have multiple horizons? If it's cited somewhere, can other cities follow? We walk you through that process, and you really start appreciating these fatwas. And you understand why some maraji' have differences. After Kitab al-Sawm, we looked at the book of Khums. Zakat. Before Khums, we looked at Zakat, and then we looked at Khums. Then last year, in April, towards the end of the book of Khums, the school year ended. So this year, inshallah, when we continue into Islamic Law 3, year 3, we're going to finish the book of Khums, and then we're going to examine the book of Hajj, which is a very important chapter in Islamic law. Now, if you did not attend Islamic Law 1 or 2, does that mean that you cannot attend this year's Islamic Law Fiqh class? You can attend. You're most welcome to sign up for Islamic Law 3, attend in person. If you're coming in person, it's Mondays and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. And it will be broadcast online. Those who cannot attend all of our classes this year, they're going to be broadcast online on Zoom. So we'll send you instructions on how to set up an account and the unique link that we will give you. You can see them from your laptop, from your smartphone, Android, iOS. Zoom works with all these platforms. And then for those who cannot attend in person or live, then the class gets recorded either that same night or the following morning, and then it's there. You can always access it later. So we want to be as accommodating as we can to people's schedules. Now, attending in person, for those who can attend in person, gives you the best experience, because you're in class with others. You can directly ask. By the way, if you're on Zoom, you can ask questions too. You just type the question. We have someone in class who will read the question for us, and we can address your questions. So our online students who are following live, they can post their questions and we will, address them immediately, inshallah. So you're most welcome to attend year 3. However, we do request that you sign up for year 1 and 2 and you view those online. That way you get a complete picture of Islamic law. You don't miss out on anything. So, any questions about the fiqh class before I present an overview of the other classes? I really, really recommend this class. It's one of our most popular classes because we're dealing with rulings that affect us every single day. Purity, salah, fasting, khums, zakat. All of these and their details are something that we experience every day. So I highly, highly recommend that you sign up for this class. In fact, last year, one of the members who had signed up for this class, maybe after a couple of months, the person came to the office and saw me, and this person said, "Sayyid, this course changed my life." Remember, this is not like a spiritual course. It's not a course where we're giving advice about how to live or how to deal with struggles. It's just fiqh, Islamic law. But this person said, just being able to see all these beautiful rulings that the Ahlul Bayt have taught us and to look at the depth and the details of it has just changed my life completely. So it really does illuminate the heart. The hadith says the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt illuminates the heart. And you will feel that light in your heart once you examine the words of Al-Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam and the other Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So that's one class that we offered. Yes, sister.
In regards to previous book of classes, if you do take them online and someone has any questions, how do you go about it?
Very good question. So let's say you do take Islamic Law 01 and 02, which are online, and you have questions about previous courses. So we have several ways of taking your questions. The most common way that members have found useful is to post the question in our WhatsApp chats. So each class has its own chat. So Islamic Law, we created a group chat for all those who've registered in that class. And they can post their questions. Now, why do I encourage you to post your questions in the group chat? It's because others might have the same question, or maybe they did not understand something. When you ask, it is clarified for everyone. Everyone learns. We have a mic here, so we can also use that for the questions. So that's one way that some people have found useful. So you can post it in the chat. That's number one. Number two, you can email us. info@hujjahseminary.com. Email us and tell us we have a question. Write your question, and we'll respond with the answer. Number three, you can send us a direct message. If you don't want to ask it in the group chat, you can just directly message us. Number four, you can either come into the office or call the office. Schedule an appointment, come into the office or call the office, and we can take your questions. So we have several methods of taking your questions. So this is Islamic Law Fiqh. The second class that we offered year 1 was legal theory. Legal theory is basically the science of jurisprudence, where we examine the rulings that scholars use to issue fatwas. See, in Islamic law, fiqh, we're dealing with rulings. This is halal, this is haram, this is najis. What happens, in a situation like that? But when it comes to legal theory, we're looking at the principles that scholars use to derive that law. I'll give you a quick example. For instance, in Islamic law, we discuss a principle called istishab, the law of continuity. Let's say at 12 p.m. you did wudu, and you know for a fact, you have certainty that you did wudu. At 5 p.m., you doubt whether you invalidated that wudu or not. Did I sleep or did I not sleep? I don't remember. I don't know. Did I go to the bathroom or no? I don't know. Now in Islamic law, what is the fatwa? If at 12 p.m. you definitely did wudu, at 5 p.m. you doubt whether you broke that wudu. What did we study in Islamic law? Do you consider yourself on wudu? Or no, you have to redo the wudu. You consider yourself on wudu. Why? Because of the law of continuity. Do not negate certainty with doubt. You're certain you were on wudu, but you don't know if you broke that wudu or not. So you have to keep that certainty. Assalamu alaikum. You don't have to, but you consider yourself to be pure. Okay, this law, the law of continuity. Where do we discuss this law? Where did this law come from? Scholars use it in fiqh, but where did it come from? What's the source for this law? Where is it applied? That's something we discuss in legal theory. So just to give you a glimpse of what legal theory is. That's the second class that we had. The third class that we offered in year one was the biography of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our greatest inspiration is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah chose him to deliver the final message. A lot of Muslims, honestly, even though we do, follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but most Muslims, they're not familiar with the life and biography of the Prophet. It is an obligation upon every Muslim to know the life of the Prophet. What did he go through? What are the events that happened in his life? It's a class that will really change your life. You will appreciate Islam more. You will appreciate what the Prophet ﷺ delivered to humanity. So we started year one by examining the life of the Prophet in Mecca. And we ended with his migration to Medina. Last year, we examined the Prophet's life in Medina up until the Battle of Uhud. So those first, basically 2-3 years. That's what we examined. This year, we're going to start to examine the life of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina after the Battle of Uhud. Because there's so many details involved in the biography of the Prophet, we do need 4 years to cover his biography. So we're now halfway through. I highly recommend that you do take this course. As we mentioned with Islamic law, if you missed 01 and 02, you're still welcome to sign up for 03. But at the same time, we would ask you to view the previous courses so you have a complete picture of the biography of the Prophet ﷺ. This class, if you're attending in person and for the live broadcast, it's on Thursdays at around 8 p.m. And I say around 8 p.m. because of the salah timing. Sometimes, we have to go 15 minutes before or after to observe the salah. So it's around 8 p.m. on Thursdays, inshallah. This is the third class. The fourth class is aqa'id, Islamic beliefs. The most important foundation in our religion is aqa'id, the belief system. So year one, we started by examining why do you need religion? Some people say you don't need religion. You can function properly. You can be morally, competent and ethical. And you don't need religion for anything. We talked about that. We talked about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some arguments of atheists, the oneness of God, the attributes of God, the justice of God. Then we looked at prophethood. We looked at imamah. We looked at infallibility, the knowledge of the imams. We examined also al-Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah. We examined the return. So last year, in year two of our Islamic beliefs, we ended the discussion by examining al-Imam al-Mahdi. This year, we're going into year three. What will you expect in year three of our Aqa'id class? In the first couple of months, we will examine some very important aspects of the Shia school of thought. And we'll examine why there are differences between our Shia school of thought and other schools of thought. So, because we discussed al-Imam al-Mahdi and the ghaiba and the occultation, we're going to start with taqleed. Marji'iyya system, taqleed. Where did this come from? Is this something that was invented, like some accuse the Shia school of thought of? Is there any basis for it? Do Sunnis do taqleed or no? You will be surprised when you take this class that yes, Sunnis do taqleed. It's just a little bit different, but the concept is there. And for over 1,000 years, every Sunni has been doing taqleed. So it's not something that only Shias do. It's just the way that they do it is a little bit different. We'll examine that. What are some misconceptions about taqleed, the marji'iyya system? Why do scholars have differences of opinion? If the haqq of the truth is one, why have multiple opinions? The truth can only be one. So that's something that we're going to examine. We're going to examine some other aspects of our Shia school of thought. For example, praying on the turba. Briefly, we'll examine that. The praying on dust or the prayer or the clay tablet. Temporary marriage, that's a source of attack on the Shia school of thought. What is that? What are some misconceptions about it? We will examine that. Taqiyya, we'll examine that. So the first couple of months, we're going to dedicate to some of these issues. Then we transition into the last part of our aqa'id class, which is the most important part in our third year. That's going to be an in-depth discussion on the soul, barzakh, and the Day of Judgment. So we will conclude the third year of our aqa'id class, maybe the last 5 months of it. We will dedicate that to these discussions. It will be very interesting. We'll examine dimensions of the soul. What is the soul? What is the difference between the nafs, the ruh? We'll examine the barzakh. What stages will we go through after we die? We'll examine the Day of Judgment, the details of the Day of Judgment, the stations we have to go through on the Day of Judgment. Then we'll examine heaven and hell. What is paradise? What can you expect there? Is it something that's purely spiritual? Is it physical as well? Has heaven been created? What about hell? What are the dimensions of hell? Who will be dwelling in hell for eternity? Do we even have eternal punishment, or does that go against the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we'll examine all of these details in depth. We'll examine verses of the Quran that talk about this. We'll examine the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt. In our Islamic beliefs class, whatever we mention, we support evidence for it. Everything that we mention, okay, we have this hadith in this book that confirms this. We have this verse in the Holy Quran. So you also get to see the evidence of it. It's not just a lecture where you're told what's going to happen on the Day of Judgment. It comes with the evidence for it. So you can actually take those hadiths and be familiar with them. So this is our aqa'id class. Now, one thing about books before we continue. For our Islamic law class, we do have a book, but it's an Arabic text. I know a lot of you probably don't read Arabic. It's not mandatory to read from the text because everything is explained in class. The text is for further reference. If you'd like to go back and look at the actual hadith or the scholarly discussion on the hadith, that would be beneficial. So it does come with a text, and it's in Arabic, because I really did not find an English text that was fully suitable for this class. So we just stuck with the Arabic text. And inshallah, as you progress with your studies, you will learn Arabic. So remember, it's not mandatory. Even if you don't read a word of Arabic, you'll still benefit from this class. You don't have to read the text. Everything is explained clearly in class. It's just supplemental. For legal theory, we do have an English text for that. For aqa'id, for the biography of the Prophet and the aqa'id class, we don't have a text for it. So it's basically just in class and the notes that you will be taking. Yes, we do recommend some supplemental texts, but basically there is no book for these two classes, for Islamic beliefs and also for aqa'id. Any questions on the aqa'id class? The timing for the aqa'id class is Thursdays at 7 p.m. Those who would like to attend in person. And if you will be following us online, it's going to be broadcast around 7 p.m. on Thursdays, inshallah. So now we've discussed 4 courses that we started with in year 1. Another course that we offered was Arabic grammar. Arabic grammar is the foundation of the Arabic language. To really appreciate its richness and depth, how it works, how to understand the words of the Quran when they're put together. Where's the subject? Where's the predicate? Where's the object? Where's the preposition? Arabic grammar is a must for seminary students who want to look at the actual text. It's not an easy class. It requires dedication. After taking the class, you have to do exercises, practices. It requires a lot of memorization. You do have to memorize a lot of these laws, a lot of these rules. But it really is a class that if you commit to, it will give you another perspective on the Arabic language. So I highly recommend it. The text for it is Arabic. But even if you don't read Arabic, that's fine. You can still follow, with the class and do the exercises. It's just a supplemental text that will help you with the exercises. But it's in no way necessary for you to know Arabic to benefit from this class. But yes, it will require commitment. It's not a class where you watch the lecture, okay, and then go and continue. After the lecture, you need a good 1 to 2 hours after each lecture. You need 1 to 2 hours to review the content that you learn, to write it, to memorize it, to practice it, to fully benefit from the course. So that's the 5th class that we offered. Any questions on Arabic grammar? So the first year we offered Arabic grammar. Last year, year 2 of our Hawza classes, we offered Arabic morphology. Arabic grammar in Arabic, it's called nahu. Arabic morphology is called sarf. What's the difference between these two? The difference between nahu and sarf is that with Arabic grammar, you're examining sentences and identifying the parts of the sentence. So for instance, ash-shajaratu jamilatun. The tree is beautiful. Okay, where's the subject? Where's the predicate? That's what you identify in Arabic grammar. And then you have the vowels at the end. The marfu', the mansoob, the maksur. That's something you study. So we're looking at a sentence and figuring out this word is what in that sentence. That's Arabic grammar. Arabic morphology looks at individual words and examines their form and weight. Because in Arabic, each word comes in a certain pattern, in a certain form. We examine these multiple forms because each form has different meanings. I'll give you a very quick example. The word alima. What does the word alima mean? He knew. It's a past tense verb. It's masculine. He knew. If you want to make it feminine, alimat. You put that ta of femininity. Okay. See the word alima? It comes from ilm. That's the root word. Knowledge. Knowledge is the root word. If you put it in a verb, alima, like fa'ala, it becomes a verb, he knew. Now, if you change the pattern and you make it allama, what does allama mean? He taught. It means to teach. See, the same root word is preserved here. You just changed the pattern. Now it gave you a different meaning. Doesn't mean he knew, it means he taught. Now you can even put it in a third pattern, which is istaf'ala. And you say ista'lama. What does ista'lama mean? If you've heard in Arabic, isti'lamat. Ista'lama means to ask. Because the pattern istaf'ala in Arabic means to seek something. Istakhraja, he took out. Ista'lama, he asked. You learn all of this in Arabic morphology. The different patterns that we have in the Arabic language. We give a lot of examples from the Quran and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this pattern here because it has this meaning. So that's Arabic morphology. So in year 1 and year 2 we discussed Arabic grammar and Arabic morphology. This year, in year 3, we don't have a class on the Arabic language. But what we're going to do is in Nahj al-Balagha, we'll examine some features of eloquence in Arabic. So this year we don't have, any independent class, specific class for the Arabic language. So that's the 5th class that we offered. Another class that we offered, year 1, was Quranic Sciences. Quranic Sciences basically walks you through the history of the Quran, how it was compiled, what kind of chapters do we have. That basic information that you need to know about the Quran is instructed in that class. We also had the Science of Hadith, which is a very, very important class. Science of Hadith basically walks us through the world of hadith and how to deal with hadiths. We have hundreds of thousands of hadiths. How do I know this hadith is authentic or not? What are the main sources that preserved our hadiths for us? This is something that we examined in the science of hadith. Another class that we had in year 1, which continued into year 2 and year 3, is Al-Kafi. Our most important work of hadith is Al-Kafi. It contains over 16,000 narrations. A lot of our belief system, our fiqh, our rulings come from this book. So we started the first year by examining the chapter on the intellect, Al-Aql, Kitab Al-Aqli wal-Jahl, intellect and foolishness. We examined about 30 narrations year 1. And the beauty of this class is that it's more of a discussion, where we examine the hadith, we explain it, we discuss it, and then those who are in class, they can actually have a wonderful discussion, where they use their experience, their perspectives. It's truly a fascinating class. And many who have attended this class, their lives have changed by the new perspectives that they have gained. So year 1, we discussed the chapter on foolishness, on intellect and foolishness. Year 2, last year, we examined most of the book of knowledge, Kitab al-Ilm, the importance of knowledge, the signs of true scholars. We examined that. This year, we're going to finish the end of the chapter of knowledge and we'll begin a new chapter, God and His attributes. Don't you want to know how the Imams of Ahlul Bayt described God? Don't you want to look at the very words of Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in talking about the signs of God, the attributes of God? That's something that will really illuminate our hearts and minds. So that's what we're going to examine this year. If you did not attend O1 or O2, that's fine. You're most welcome to attend O3. But please do sign up for O1 and O2 so you get a better picture of, Al-Kafi and the previous narrations that we have examined. This class is going to be offered this year on Wednesdays around 8 p.m. So for those who will be coming in class and those who will follow us online using Zoom, it's going to be around 8 p.m. on Wednesdays, inshallah. It's a once-a-week class. Yes. So this book, Al-Kafi, we do have a textbook. It's in English. It has the Arabic text and then English translation and then a commentary. The translation and commentary is by the respected Sheikh Ridwan Arastu. He's very highly qualified, very good translation. So we do give you the book. By the way, all the books are included with the course when you register for it. So we do have a text for that, yes. I think he's published so far 3 volumes. I've not seen the 4th volume yet. So we've looked at volume 1 in year 1. We looked at volume 2 in year 2. This year we're going to look at volume 3, inshallah. Any questions about Al-Kafi? This is a class you don't want to miss. It's an amazing class. And the best class discussions that we've had at the seminary is probably in this class. So this is basically what we had in year 1. Now in year 2, we added a few classes. One of the classes that we added is Nahj al-Balagha. Nahj al-Balagha is one of our most important sources after the Holy Quran. These are the words of the commander of the faithful. So last year, we spent the year examining 2 sermons in Nahj al-Balagha. Sermon 1, in which the Imam starts talking about the greatness of Allah, the attributes of Allah. Then the creation of the universe. We talked about how Imam describes how the universe was created. And we kind of, talked about the Big Bang and modern science. And what does modern science say about the creation of the universe? How the atmosphere was filled with the universe, how it was filled with water vapor. We talked about that. Imam Ali mentions the role of water in the creation of the universe. It's really fascinating. Then how the Imam ﷺ transitions into the world of angels. How God created the angels. What type of angels do we have? What are their tasks? What do they do? It's all fascinating. Then the Imam ﷺ talked about the creation of the human being. Prophet Adam ﷺ. Were there humans before Adam? We talked about that. How did the children of Prophet Adam multiply? Did they marry each other, the siblings marrying each other? Like a lot of Muslims claim that. We refuted that. We said no. We look at the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, and the Ahlul Bayt have a different perspective. We examined that. Then we talked about the role of prophets. Then we talked about the Hajj, because the Imam ﷺ concludes his sermon in speaking about the Hajj. That was sermon number 1. Then we examined sermon number 3, which is called Ash-Shiqshaqiyya. It's one of the most important sermons in Nahj al-Balagha. Basically, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he highlights the injustice that was done to him when he was marginalized, when the caliphate was confiscated from him. And the Imam gives us basically a historical account of what happened. The 3 groups that fought him: the people of Jamal, the people of Siffin, and the Khawarij. So we examined that in detail, and we ended the year by examining sermon number 3. This year, we're going to look at a selection of other sermons, and we will examine them. What you will expect this year, that maybe we did not do that much last year, will give a little bit more emphasis on the eloquence part of Nahj al-Balagha. Because Nahj al-Balagha, in addition to it having this rich content, the way Imam Ali delivers it is fascinating. It's amazing. His word choices, the poetic flow that it has is really fascinating. So this year we'll try to shed more light on that. I know most members are not fluent in Arabic, so it's a little bit difficult to see the richness of the words that the Imam ﷺ uses, but we'll give you some examples as we examine some of the sermons. So Nahj al-Balagha is not a class that you want to miss. It's going to be offered Mondays at 8 p.m. inshallah. Any questions on Nahj al-Balagha? Yes. Yes, it's going to be the same book we used last year, because the book we used last year, I think, has maybe 100-something sermons in it. So, with the depth that Nahj al-Balagha has, you need years and years to look at all these sermons. So we're still using the same book. The book that we have for Nahj al-Balagha gives you the Arabic text, and then it gives you the English translation. So it also has English with it. Any other questions about Nahj al-Balagha? Last year we also had 2 additional courses. One was Intro to Tafseer. Basically in this class, you get a glimpse of the different schools of Tafseer, the different types of Tafseer. You have intellectual Tafseer, you have Tafseer of the Quran that explains the Quran, you have the Tafseer through the Hadith, for instance. So basically you get a glimpse of the world of Tafseer, how it works, what kind of schools of thought do we have. It's a very interesting class. This is available online. Another class that we had was the biography of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. So if you'd like to know more about Imam al-Sadiq, the events that happened during his life, the debates that he had with atheists, it's a very interesting class. These were 2 editions that we had last year. 2 other editions that we had last year is contemporary Islamic law. We talked about fiqh, right? But in this class, we examined contemporary issues that affect us. For instance, organ donation, right? A lot of people ask about organ donation. What's the fiqhi perspective on that? It's a very interesting class. We mentioned the sighting of the moon. In Islamic law, we briefly examined that, but in contemporary law, you get the whole picture of the different rulings on the sighting of the crescent and why the maraja have differences of opinion. The laws of interest, for example, seeking out a mortgage from the bank, that involves interest. Is this halal? Is this haram? Why do scholars have differences of opinion? Are there any workarounds? This is something that you will examine in contemporary law. So I highly recommend that you take this class. These contemporary issues, you will really appreciate the depth that our scholars, have to examine when arriving at these rulings. Another class that was offered last year is Intro to Rijal Studies. Basically, I call it the Science of Biographies. We have thousands of narrators who narrated hadiths for us, right? Well, who are these narrators? How do we know a narrator is reliable or not? It's a very fascinating class that gives you an idea of what our scholars have to go through to verify the reliability of narrators. What sources do they use? What kind of biographical data do we have? What kind of judgments our scholars use in saying this narrator is truthful, this narrator is not truthful. I highly recommend that you take this class. It's very fascinating. So this is Intro to Rijal Studies. Any questions about these classes from last year? Yes. Yes, you reminded me. Last year we also had rulings for Muslims in the West. Basically, the rulings that we here in the West have to deal with, whether it's family issues or any other types of issues, halal, haram food, restaurants. That's a very fascinating course that walked you through all of these details. This year we're not having rulings for Muslims in the West. This wasn't a class that was offered last year, but it's available online. It did also come with an English text, so I highly recommend that you do take it. Let's now talk about this year's classes. What are we adding this year? A few additions this year. So a lot of the classes are continuing into year 3. Biography of the Prophet ﷺ, Islamic beliefs, Kafi, Islamic Law, Nahj al-Balagha. These are continuing into their next year. But the new classes that we are offering this year, one is the major principles of the Quran, major themes and principles of the Quran. Basically, what you expect in this course is more of a hands-on tafsir, where the instructor is going to take major themes found in the Quran, and then he will take those verses that talk about these themes and discuss them. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us many themes in the Holy Quran. As Muslims, we need to be familiar. These themes basically summarize the Quran for us. Right now, as a Muslim, can I stand up for a few minutes and explain what the themes of the Quran are? The Quran is 600 pages in the common Arabic script. What does God talk about in these 600 pages? What are the major themes of the Quran? This is something that this class will introduce you to. So it's really fascinating, it's really important for us to know the themes of the Quran. This is going to be offered on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and it will be broadcast live. That's the first edition that we have. The second edition that we have is the history of the development of Shia thought or Shia jurisprudence. This will give you an overview of the history of this school of thought. How did it develop? What are the major events that impacted the Shia school of thought? Who were the instrumental scholars in pretty much solidifying the school of thought for us after Al-Ghaybat al-Kubra, Al-Ghaybat al-Sughra and Al-Ghaybat al-Kubra? So this will really allow you to appreciate the Shia school of thought, the events that this school of thought had to experience in history, and who were the important figures who helped shape the school of thought. This is going to be offered on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Another addition that we have is a course on akhlaq, the philosophy of ethics and akhlaq. One of the pillars of the religion of Islam is akhlaq, ethics, morals. Where do we get these morals from? See, today we have a very important discussion in society. Who decides moral values? Look at the world today. Ask your society. Who decides moral values? A lot of people will say society itself. Society decides moral values. If society says something is right, it's right. If it says it's wrong, it's wrong. 50 years ago, society here in America said homosexuality is immoral. Today it's saying no. Give them their rights. Why is it immoral? Not everyone, but a lot of people are saying it, right? Society, does it designate these values for you or no? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that? That's a very important discussion that you will expect in this class. Who decides moral values? Another trend that we find today in society is the role of feelings, right? If you feel that something is good and right, then it is right. And if you feel something is immoral, then it's wrong. And the youth today, by the way, the younger generation, the way that they're looking at life, their philosophy on life is basically coming from feelings. Is that good? Is that bad? Is this dangerous? What are the consequences? And then, in this class, you will be exposed to the ethics and morals that we have in the religion of Islam. What are the most important ethical standards and moral standards that we have? So it's a fascinating class. This is an online class that will be instructed from overseas. So it's on Saturdays at 4 p.m. It will be broadcast live on Zoom, Saturdays at 4 p.m. It will be also recorded, and it will be available online for those who cannot tune in to the live class. So that's an exciting addition that we're going to have. Another addition that we have this year is Jurisprudential Maxims. In Arabic, we call this al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyya. Basically, in this class, you will learn about 30 jurisprudential maxims that we have in our Islamic legal system. For example, the law of purity. Where is that applied? We did talk about some of it in an Islamic Law 01 class, but this gives you a holistic view of this principle. The law of no harm. This is one of the laws that we have in the religion of Islam. What is this law? Where is it applied? So it's a really interesting course that I highly recommend you take it. This is also an online course that is going to be presented on Saturdays at 3 p.m. And all the times that we've discussed are Eastern Standard Time. So Saturday at 3 p.m., it's going to be broadcast live on Zoom. This is something that I highly recommend that you take, inshallah. Yes, sister.
The Saturday classes last year we didn't have those. So are we going to be in class Saturdays too?
So the Saturday classes, because they're going to be offered live on Zoom, and you can ask questions on using this application, it will not be broadcast in class here. So wherever you are, just tune in to this class, because it's going to be offered live. Last year, the reason why we had it in class, because we were using Skype, and the only way for you to kind of tune in live was to come to the class itself. But this year, with Zoom, we're a lot more flexible. So the challenge that we had is that on Saturdays at 3 and 4 p.m., it's very difficult to come in and come. People have to drive or they have some obligations. But once it's live and you can see the class from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are, then, that makes it more accessible, inshallah. Remember, it's also recorded, so you can see it afterwards. But the good thing about seeing it live is that you can ask questions. So if you have any question, you can either verbally ask it, Zoom supports that capacity, or you could just write the question, and the one who's teaching will see the question, and they'll answer it immediately. So remember, to really learn and benefit, it's important that you engage with the teacher. Ask questions. The beauty of these classes is that any perspective you have, any objection you have, any misconception you have, this is the moment to ask. It's more of a discussion. So tune in live into these classes and come with your questions, and the instructors will be very happy to address your questions, inshallah. Yes, sister. Assalamu alaikum.
All these classes that you mentioned are, mashallah, they're amazing. But I was wondering, what can you advise for parents who have children between the age of 12 to 16 that would like these sort of classes for their children, and not necessarily online just because it's more interactive in person? What can you recommend if also they outgrew the Saturday school and they're not quite old enough to go into these classes? What can you recommend?
So if parents have children between the ages of 12 and 16, and they're really interested in these classes, as the sister said, they've outgrown the Saturday school and they want something deeper, something more concentrated, what do we suggest for them? The minimum age that we have is, of course, 16. And The reason is because a lot of times in class, it's not just that, we're talking about maybe deep concepts. I know a lot of 14-year-olds, mashallah, they're very smart. They can grasp those concepts. But because we do have adults in the class, and sometimes we do talk about, certain subjects that might be a little bit more appropriate for adults, having someone under the age of, let's say, 15, under the age of 15, is a challenge for us because of, the makeup of our classes. So here's my solution for those under the age of 15. Those who are close to 16, we can make an exception, no problem. Yes, we do have an age restriction, a minimum of 16, but those who are close to 16 years old, that's fine. We can enroll them, they're most welcome to attend in class. But those who are under 15, here's the solution that I have. It's pretty challenging to have them with us in the classroom, due to some of the reasons I've mentioned. So they are most welcome to follow the class online. With the live broadcast that we have, they can tune in online, they can see the class, and the parents can organize that for them. So that's one way to benefit from these classes. If the timing doesn't work, they can just, view the class later. But what I would recommend for those who are under 15, that their parents be involved with what they're learning. So either have them in a group, if you know others in the community, for instance, who are in that age range, have 3, 4 of them get together and see the class together. That will be more effective. Or one thing that I highly recommend, I know parents are busy, believe me, but for the parent to see the class with their child. You know how much you will benefit? Most parents, believe me, most parents in our communities, they don't have the proper Islamic education. A lot of what we discuss in these courses is something that parents can benefit from. Remember, the Hadith says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Is there a better program that you sit with your child and you learn about the teachings of Ahlul Bayt? That's a beautiful opportunity. So I recommend that the parents take the class with their children. Discuss it with your children. It's beautiful. After class, put 15, 20 minutes. What did you learn? Let's discuss these concepts. If you find them maybe struggling a little bit with some concepts, help them. So I highly recommend parents who do have children in that age range to take the class with their children. It will be very, very beneficial. It's live. You can ask questions. It's interactive that way. So that's my recommendation. So I know that the physical attendance does have an added experience, but just, for technical reasons, it's very challenging for us to have anyone under 15 in the class.
Do you think maybe in the future it's something that you guys maybe can offer? Because I don't mind, we'll sit with the child, but sometimes I feel at that age the child likes to do things independently and kind of break free from their parents a little. So if it's something they can go, maybe with a few friends, sit with the Sayyid in that classroom environment and do it on their own, I think that'll give them a better feeling about it.
So one thing I can recommend is if they can get together, maybe at least 2 or 3, watch the class together, and then they're welcome to set, let's say, a meeting or an appointment with the teacher, let's say on the weekends or some other time, once a week, once a month, where they come and they discuss that with the teacher. So we are willing to do that. And we are completely open to that. We'll sit with them, review the material with them, see if they have any concerns, any questions. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible. If there's anyone who's online in another state, we can, just do a live session with those students as well and address their questions. So yes, we can accommodate them that way. No problem. You're welcome. So basically that summarizes the classes that we've offered in the past, the classes that we will offer this year. Now you have an overview of what to expect in these classes. A couple of notes about homework and exams and certificates. We do have a midterm and a final for each course. Usually in January is when we take the midterm. And then after the month of Ramadan is where we have our final. The midterm and the final consist of multiple choice questions. short answer questions that you can take all online. It's timed, so it's an open book, that's fine. But remember that it's timed. So if you're not really prepared, you may not have enough time to go flip through the book and find the answer or flip through your notes. But my important goal here is to learn. So if you get the answer from the book, from your notes, that's fine. As long as you know the answer, that's what we want. So we're okay in having the exams open book, but remember that it is timed, so it's important to be prepared for them. So we have the midterm and the final. These midterms and finals help you prepare for the class, remember the content, and it also gives us an opportunity to evaluate whether the students are really understanding the content based on the results. Is it mandatory to take the midterm and final? It's highly recommended, but it's not mandatory. So we don't impose it as a condition such that if you don't take it, you're no longer welcome in the class, you have to drop the class. No, that's not how it works. Because this is the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt. There are some, for whatever reason, they don't want to take the midterm and the final. I discourage that, obviously, but it's not something that we impose. It's highly recommended that you do take them. You will benefit. Once you prepare for the midterm and final, you yourself will benefit. Now, those who do take the midterm and the final, and they successfully pass, our passing grade is 70%, those who do pass the midterm and the final, they are eligible for a certificate. This is not a degree. It's not an official degree. It's just a certificate of completion by the Hawza and the Islamic Institute of America that this person has taken this class and they have successfully passed this class. So it's just a certificate of completion for those courses. Those who do pass the midterm and the final, they will be eligible to receive that certificate, inshallah. We don't really have homework for most of our classes. It's recommended that you take in-class notes and then review them. And the best way to review them is to get together with others. 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Have weekly sessions where you discuss the content. This content is very useful in your life. Knowing it, memorizing it is extremely useful. So there isn't really that much homework, but as long as you take down notes, you review them, you discuss them with some others, you ask questions regularly about things that are not that clear, you should do fine on the midterm and the finals, inshallah. Yes, brother.
One of the questions that is often asked by the folks out there when they find out about Hujjah Seminary is the fact that there are many seminaries out there in the world. Are these classes being essentially taught from the perspective of being objective or subjective based on which seminary is this Hujjah Seminary following as far as the concepts and the thoughts that they cover?
That's a very good question, brother. So we have a lot of seminaries around the world. The main seminaries that we have are in the holy city of Najaf and in the holy city of Qom. But we have hundreds of seminaries scattered all around the Muslim world. We do even have some online seminaries. This is not the only online seminary. There are other online seminaries. Maybe a couple of them are even English online seminaries. So basically in this Al-Hujjah seminary, what path are we taking? What model are we taking? At Al-Hujjah seminary, we are taking primarily the traditional classical Hawza studies that you will find in Najaf, that you will find in Qom, and presenting it in an organized, structured way, and also offered in English. So when we developed the curriculum, I basically looked at the classes being offered in the holy city of Najaf by the mainstream Maraja and scholars, the classes that are being offered in Qom by the main teachers in the seminary, and basically we took something that best represented these two seminaries. So for instance, in our fiqh book, I know you have types of fiqh schools of thought in the seminary. But we chose a book which is called Fiqh al-Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam by the late Sheikh Mohammad Jawad Mughniya. He's a well-respected scholar who is respected in Najaf and Qom. He gives you the mainstream fiqh perspective. It's not something that's on the periphery. It's not something that is extreme. So you will find that these classes represent the mainstream studies that we have at the Hawza. Remember, the Hawza is very diverse. You've got scholars on all sides of the spectrum, right? There are some who have a particular view about the world of hadith. They're either too critical or they're too flexible with hadith, like the akhbaris who just accept any hadith that we have in our sources. We have that. We still have that in our seminary. At Al-Hujjah Seminary, we try to take the moderate path, where we try to look at what mainstream scholars are saying about, let's say, the science of hadith, and basically teaching that to the students. The same applies to the fiqhi school of thought, and even, some other classes like the aqaid, for instance. The Islamic beliefs class, you will find a range of opinions about all issues. But what I do is I look at the books of our scholars, like the sources that we have from Al-Ilahiyat, Sheikh Ja'far Subhani, Haqq al-Yaqeen, Sayyid Abdullah Shubbar, some other scholars. I look at the mainstream ideas that most of our scholars have accepted. If something is controversial, maybe just one or two scholars have accepted it, we tend to keep away from that. Yes, we might mention it in class that this is an opinion that some scholars have, but the mainstream curriculum that we have is one that reflects the majority of our maraja', the majority of our scholars, and that which is considered mainstream in the seminary. So that's basically the curriculum that we do follow. By looking at the curriculum in Najaf and in Qom, we took that which is moderate and has the greatest representation of scholars. That's our approach. For example, in Usul al-Kafi class, you will notice that, sometimes we have a discussion on the chain, right? Well, scholars in the seminary, they have different opinions about the chain. Some are very strict. If there's one person who's unreliable in the chain of narrators, or who's anonymous, they automatically omit that hadith. Khalas, this hadith has absolutely no status for us. That's extreme. We do mention that there are some scholars who have that opinion. And then you have the akhbari side. Any hadith in the book of Kafi, or any hadith in all of the 4 books is sahih. Don't argue about the chain. Well, that's extreme too. We take a middle ground. We do examine the chain very briefly. If there's someone who's not reliable, oftentimes we'll mention that. Najashi or X scholar, he says this narrator is not that reliable. However, does this mean that the hadith is not sahih? Well, let's look at the content. If the content is compatible with the Quran, if it's confirmed by other hadiths, then we will accept the hadith. So we try to take that moderate approach when it comes to dealing with a lot of these issues. So that's how I would probably address a question like that. If you have any follow-up questions or other questions, please feel free. So the last day of class is going to be about 1 week before the month of Ramadan. So end of April, inshallah, is when we'll have the last day of class. So we start on Monday, September 23rd, and we'll continue till the end of April, inshallah. One final note about the course fees. So each course is $100, which includes the books. The first 3 courses are $100 each, so $300. Any additional course would be $40. So that's a discount that the seminary offers. Anyone who would like to seek a sponsorship to sponsor the course fees, some of the fees or all the fees, they just can email us, info@hujjahseminary.com, and say that I would like to seek a sponsorship for these classes, and we will arrange for sponsors to take care of the fees. So the fees in no way should discourage anyone from learning from the knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Anyone can seek that sponsorship. It's available for all those who might have any difficulty in paying for the fees, inshallah. Any final questions before we conclude the session? Remember that the most honorable thing that you can do in worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to expand your knowledge. This is a great opportunity. Let your friends know. that there is such an opportunity. Let's take advantage of this, inshallah. We have many, many challenges ahead of us, especially here in the West. And the best way to prepare ourselves is to be well grounded in Islamic knowledge. Because every day there is a new idea out there in society. Multiple genders. You know, that's an issue that our youth are dealing with. Parents don't know how to deal with that. Our youth don't know how to deal with that. Well, if you're grounded in Islamic knowledge, if you've seen the words of the Ahlul Bayt, you know how Islamic law works, you're familiar with the major themes of the Quran, you're familiar with the book of Al-Kafi, you have that foundation that helps you deal with these challenges. That's why I also recommend parents to take these classes, not just their children, not just students, not just college students. Everyone is welcome to take these classes, because they really do give us that foundation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. I really look forward to this third year, inshallah. We ask Allah to bless this journey. We ask Al-Imam Al-Hujjah, ajjalallahu ta'ala farajah, to also bless this journey. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.